timeline this afternoon begins with Doug Marrone. We'll have more on an injury in Jacksonville in just a minute. But ahead on NFL Live, our top 100 players of 2018 will share with you our projections. That article now up on ESPN.com. And another look at our preseason Sunday standouts with just one more round of matchups until we play football for real. Hello there. Glad to have you with us on this Monday afternoon. I'm Wendy Nix. Dan Graziano is here. Damian Woody. So, too, is Louis Riddick. It is the week of the preseason that is supposed to tell us the most. We'll look at some of the highlights and tell you what stood out. But we begin with news from the Jaguars. Head coach Doug Marrone announcing wide receiver Marquise Lee will undergo knee surgery. That means he'll land on injured reserve. He injured his left knee on a hit against the Atlanta Falcons on Saturday. Here's teammate Jalen Ramsey on what he believes contributed to this situation.
Kind of got to be mad at the NFL, I guess. Not mad at them, but I mean, it's just how the rule is. Like people are scared to tackle normal, I guess, just because they think they're gonna get helmet to helmet or they think they're gonna get flagged. And now it's not even flagged; it's also, you know, potentially getting thrown out the game, and that's game-changing stuff to happen.
Well, certainly news no one wants to hear at this point of the preseason. Louis, does Jalen Ramsey have a point as we see everybody adjust to the new rule?
He absolutely does. Look, players have been conditioned to stay away from upper body shots. As far as defenders, when they're hitting people in the open field, stay away from chest shots, stay away from head shots, because even if you're aiming for the chest, the target point can change quickly if the offensive player lowers his head. So players now are aiming below the waist, down around the thigh and knee area. The league has sent the message that, look, obviously they are okay with this risk of injury right here that you're seeing on the screen, but they are not okay with shots to the head and concussion numbers going up. And there's no way you can tackle going low like that without your head going down. Otherwise, if you don't want to see these kind of injuries, players are going to have to more or less, in that kind of situation, almost take such a passive type of approach to that tackle to where the receiver is going to be at such an advantage that I'm just telling you, I've said this all along, offensive numbers are going to explode. If you look in the Raider and the Packer game, when Marcus Gilchrist got run over in the open field because he was confused about how to hit Lance Kendricks in this situation. I'm telling you, I could put myself in his shoes. When he sees this guy coming, he basically stops, doesn't bend his knees, bends at the waist, ducks his head, only because he looked as though he didn't know what to do because he was thinking too much. And he ducks his head, gets run over, gets the flag, so he loses all the way around. These are the kind of things that players are going to have to kind of get themselves out of, meaning this. You're almost going to have to free your mind up a little bit and take some risk as far as knowing that sometimes it's not going to be perfect and I may take the 15-yard penalty. Otherwise, things are going to happen like you just saw happen to Gilchrist.
When we look at this rule, when we look at these penalties, we're looking in slow motion. You know, we have the benefit of stopping, of slowing it down. This is a bang-bang game, Damian. It happens in an instant. And to your point, Louis, you know, I don't know if you have time to make all the assessments that we're asking players to make.
Well, listen, I don't think this is anything new. Remember back in 2013, Gronk tore his ACL because of a similar type hit.
TJ Ward.
The NFL has been planting these seeds, and ultimately where we've come to now is, and we've all heard this through NFL meetings and so forth, they're trying to change the culture, okay? They're trying to get these guys from having the crown hidden with the crown of their heads and all that type of stuff. Remember the segment we used to have here, the jacked up, segment. NFL wants no parts of that right now, and that's clearly what they're trying to enforce with this new helmet rule. The problem with the helmet rule right now is it's almost like the catch rule that we just don't know. Like there's a lot of gray area here with how the referee is going to call it. They seem like they've tampered down on it this past week, but the minute that this call comes about and somebody gets ejected, boy, all hell is going to break loose on this
It will.
call.
And listen, we've seen this before. We've had officials come in. We've been in these meetings. We've had explanations, demonstrations, whatever. But, Dan, you know this. You can change the rule. It doesn't mean that's instantaneous in implementation. We are talking about human beings on both the official side and the player side.
Yeah, and what you guys are talking about is growing pains in terms of how players handle these kinds of situations and how they're officiated. And when you talk to people in the league about this new rule, which is a very easy target right now, they will tell you it's going to take some time. They're expecting it to take a couple of years to change an ingrained behavior in defensive players and the way they hit. But they think it's important enough to get that posture, they keep calling it a posture, out of the game, where you duck your head and you straighten your back and you're using the top of your head as the thing you hit with. And they're willing to accept those growing pains in the meantime. That's a shame what happened to Marquise Lee, and I don't want to minimize it. But all the time you see guys get hurt and on different kinds of hits in the preseason. To use the helmet rule as the scapegoat for this, I think is a little bit sort of an easy way out right now. I think it's more about I think you're talking about a long-term change in the way the game is officiated.
Yeah, I don't see Jalen as using the helmet rule as a scapegoat. I'm just saying with this decision and with this new emphasis is going to come consequences. And the consequences are going to be people are going to go low and people's knees are going to get blown out. It's just a matter of fact. It's going to happen that way. Look, spearing has never been allowed in the NFL. Spearing's never been allowed in football. You're never supposed to hit with the top of your helmet. I know. I have a relative who had his career cut short because his head dropped on a Monday night football game against Willie Gault, and he basically broke his neck and had to retire from football. So look, we understand the dangers of lowering your head. We're just saying this: it's very, very difficult in certain situations in the open field for defenders to get low enough on a guy to avoid head and chest shots, and at the same time keep his head up so he doesn't get in that posture without something bad happening. So what's going to happen is this: defenders are going to have to choose to not hit. They're going to have to take some very awkward angles and adopt some very awkward postures in order to get people on the ground. And if you want to talk about changing the culture and football is going to look different, you're absolutely right. It is going to look different. It's going to look like guys sitting back there playing very passive, trying to decide, how do I stay in this football game? Because if I hit this guy the way I'm used to, it's going to draw a fine. It's going to get me kicked out of this football game. So just as long as we understand that we have to live with the consequences of how this is going to change how defensive football is played, fine. I'm all for player safety, but you can't have both things. You can't have the game that we grew up loving and at the same time trying to change the culture and thinking everything's just going to be, well, they'll get used to it. It's just almost physically impossible in some instances.
But it is going to change.
You're right, it is. I mean, it is, but just get used to the game looking different.
Here's the thing that
have to look different.
Here's the thing that I find fascinating. You actually was talking about it. The fact that it's all on the defense. You got to understand the game of football. A lot of these offensive players are, dropping their heads, in particular, running backs, and it's just funny. And it's just funny how everything has been geared towards the defensive players. Remember, like years ago, when the rules about illegal contact past 5 yards. What was that for? To put up more points for the offense. This new helmet deal. I agree with you wholeheartedly, Lewis, that offensive explosion is going to go to another level, because the one thing that you can't do with players is have them thinking. When you have guys thinking out there, that's when things start changing, and that's where the offensive explosion is going to happen.
So the way the rule's written is lowering the crown of the helmet to initiate contact. So you're tending toward calling it on defensive players because defensive players are usually the ones initiating contact. That's the nature of the game. But running backs initiate contact with the crown of their helmet, and that's been illegal for a couple of years. It just hasn't been enforced that well.
Well, I'll tell you what.
It's going to have to be.
I'll tell you what. It remains to be seen if it actually is enforced. Because I'll tell you this. I could pick out 10, 12, 15 point-of-impact plays in a football game on any given Sunday when a runner is about to get hit in the open field or between the tackles in the briar patch, as I call it. They do not run in there and lift their chin up and say, hey, just hit me all up in here. They drop their head lower than defensive players sometimes.
They're protecting themselves. That's what you're taught to do.
How many times has it been called?
Well, we're going to have to start see some equality there.
Well, I don't know if we have to. We'd like to.
We'd like to. We have to, or we will have a problem.
Here's the main problem. The main problem is once you start, you can't keep throwing all these flags, because then you slow down the pace of the game, and that's one of the worst things you could do to the game is have this thing just bogged down with a whole bunch of calls.
All I know is this. What we were told was this: get ready for the game to look different. If they are true to their word in terms of trying to introduce and change this new culture, it is going to look different, folks. There's no other way to get around it.
As you might imagine, this discussion will continue. We're just getting started. We haven't even played week 1 of the regular season, and this will be a topic of discussion as we move forward. The Cowboys and Cardinals, however, wrapped up week 3 of the preseason. No Dak, no Zeke. Let's take a look. Backup quarterback Cooper Rush under center. The interception to Patrick Peterson, who takes it back for the touchdown. Cardinals lead 14-0 after that turnover.
Yeah, look, this is an interesting situation here as far as how the Dallas Cowboys team is shaping up. You just see just how important it is for them to have their horses on the football field, particularly Dak Prescott, because they cannot win with that kind of quarterback play. Period. End of story.
We move now to, that's the turnover. We saw a lot of turnovers in this game. In fact, Cowboys had 8 of their own. Third quarter now. This is Mike White shotgun complete over the middle, but Blake Jarwin can't hang on to the football.
Yeah, look, I mean, the Dallas Cowboys, we've talked about over and over, they need to play a certain style of football, which means don't turn it over, play field position, run the football. Well, they put all the things on display last night that will cost you football games and cost them games in particular.
They did indeed. That is White, the deep ball over the middle, and again, the interception. Cardinals go on to win 27-3. And again, the story of this game, at least for the Dallas Cowboys, was turnovers. Here's head coach of the Dallas Cowboys.
Well, we knew it was going to be challenging tonight with the combination of guys we were playing against, the combination of guys they had in the ball game early. To have 8 turnovers in the ball game, I've never been a part of a game like that.
You know, it was almost comical relative to the turnover situation. And if you're going to win a game with not a lot of offense, then you certainly need to run the ball about 3 times and kick it and wait on them to make the turnovers. We didn't do that tonight, but we'll hopefully get some things on some of those players that did play and evaluate from there and head on to Houston.
There are a fair amount of questions when it comes to the offense in Dallas. 3 of the 11 offensive starting Cowboys from Week 1 last year are not on the roster, including the team's all-time leader in touchdown catches and 11-time Pro Bowl tight end. The strength, though, supposed to be, I say supposed to be, the O-line, but 4 of their starters missed time in practice this week, which leads us to round 1 of Overreaction Monday. I'll say this, the Cowboys need to win with defense, which is certainly not what we've seen in recent history. Louis Riddick, overreaction or not an overreaction?
I'm going to say it's not an overreaction only because, look, it's my belief that I just don't know if Dallas has enough weaponry to where the offense, again, will carry the day for them as it has in years past. I think the defense has improved to the point where their pass rush and their ability to really affect how offenses attack them has changed the game down in Dallas. If you look at their defensive ends in particular, just look at how DeMarcus Lawrence and Randy Gregory look right now, along with Tyrone Crawford. They have some guys, Damian, that can absolutely wreck shop for you right at the snap, and you know everything will go downhill for you offensively from there. Look, Randy Gregory right here, I mean, he is coming off the ball like a guy who hasn't missed a whole lot of football here. I mean, look, DJ Humphries, he was like, okay, look, you can take this guy out of the game because right now he's making me look real bad. And Randy Gregory is a guy who's on a mission. And look, DeMarcus Lawrence, I've said this on this show a couple different times now, he is a guy who opponents last year said when we played the Dallas Cowboys, number 90 was the first guy we looked for when our offense was on the field and their defense was on the field because he can change games. You pair him with Randy and Tyrone, they've got some horses now to where they can change the game in terms of how they play it this year.
We will continue with Overreaction Monday in just a minute, but from ESPN.com now, some breaking news. We knew there was progress, and it appears there has been. Odell Beckham Jr. reportedly closing in on a new deal with the New York Giants that will make him the highest paid wide receiver in football. This is according to a source who tells our Josina Anderson. There had been signs that things were moving in the right direction between the team and player. The olive branch of coming to optional workouts and then, of course, showing up at camp. And now, Dan, it looks like Odell Beckham Jr. will stay with the Giants for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, trying to get as many details as we can. But what I understand based on the texts that are coming in, highest paid wide receiver in football, that could mean a lot of different things, right? Average per year, but also in terms of guarantee. What does that mean in terms of numbers? Probably a deal that comes in around $18 to $19 million a year. But watch the guarantee, because Mike Evans' guarantee was 50 or 55 total for injury, and then 42 at signing. Likely to beat at least one, if not both of those numbers, and then we'll see the structure in terms of how it's paid out in the first 3 years. But once Odell Beckham Jr. was in training camp, this was something that was going to come together quickly. The Giants were obviously okay with making him the highest paid receiver in football, and this is a deal that is very close to completion and could be completed and announced at some point in the next couple of days.
You know, it's interesting because there was a time during the offseason where the Giants did sort of kick the tires on a potential trade after another incident off the field. But we've also known this, that they've been very pleased with Odell Beckham in terms of his work ethic, Lewis in terms of what he brings, obviously, on the field as a player. And you just got the sense in the past few weeks that this deal was going to get done. It was just a matter of when.
Yeah, Wendy, they really went to work on the relationship. As time went on and Dave Gettleman really was starting to put his stamp on the football team in terms of the kind of players he was bringing in and what he was looking for, it seemed like the relationship improved. And look, you have to take your hat off to Odell Beckham. He did exactly what he was supposed to do. He held up his end. Whether you think he was doing it just as a means to an end in order to get paid, that remains to be seen, but he conducted himself the right way. He diligently went about his rehab. He showed up. He was a guy who you didn't hear very much from in terms of making any kind of outlandish statements. He just went about his work. Like I've said all along, the Giants have wanted to pay him. The Giants know what they have in him. They have wanted to pay him. They just want to feel comfortable. They just want to be able to sleep at night and go, hey, look, once we guarantee all this money to you and the leverage kind of shifts again back to your favor, are you going to still do right by us and reward us for the faith we're showing in you? Looks like they're doing that, and that's the way it should be. I just hope Odell Beckham...
Makes sense to the world, right?
Exactly. I mean, it's really not complicated what's going on here. You just hope it all works out for everybody.
Immensely talented, difference-making player. If there are drawbacks, he's missed some time with injury, and of course there have been behavior shenanigans, right?
Sure.
Kicking net, you know, getting tossed out of a game, suspended for a game, fighting with Josh Norman, etc. But I've been told by multiple people in that Giants building that one of the key elements in terms of strengthening the relationship between Odell Beckham and the team has been new head coach Pat Shurmur, who's taken the right kind of tone with Odell, and Odell has responded to him. So if that's the case, that Pat Shurmur helped get this relationship to a point that it really was not in March and April when those kinds of things were being talked about, then that's a big win for the new coach right out of the gate.
Well, listen, Odell Beckham Jr. is box office, okay? We're in the entertainment business. People come to watch the Giants because of Odell Beckham Jr. He's an electrifying guy. Obviously, he had the injury last year, but when you talk about Odell Beckham Jr., you're talking about top 2 or 3 wide receiver in the National Football League. So you had to understand at some point the contract was going to be addressed, and Odell Beckham Jr. was going to become the highest paid wide receiver in the league.
You know what? Good for everybody, right? Win-win.
Sure.
Good for Odell Beckham. Good for the New York Giants, who are a better team with him out there. To Lewis's point, keep it moving in the same
For
direction.
those of us who like to watch football.
Yeah, exactly.
It's really fun to watch.
Win. How about that on a Monday? Still to come on NFL Live, Josh Allen was sacked for more yards than he had passing. Could the rookie quarterback be in over his head just a bit? We'll talk about that. And Allen wasn't the only quarterback. Surprising us is Andrew Luck back to his old self. Stay tuned. We'll show you what happened.
I'm not going to lie to you guys. I actually feel very good and strong. My shoulder felt alive. I was a little happier with where the ball went when I threw it.
NFL Live is brought to you by 1800 Tequila. Just refined enough. Please drink responsibly. And Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.